happen with automobile and housing prices going into the next year or two? Why are these important? Well, everybody needs a home and most people need a car. And those two expenses, in many cases, are the largest expenses that people have. So if you are um, wanting to plan what your financial future is going to be, you want to make sure you're taking those two things into account. You want to make sure that you're recognizing what you can expect to pay for a home if you're going to buy a home or rent a home, or what you're going to expect to pay for a vehicle. But first, we're going to talk very briefly about something that maybe you don't think is a big deal, but it's something that can affect everybody, mostly for businesses. However, as an employee, as a vendor, even as a family, you may have some exposure to this type of risk. And what we're talking about is cyber attacks. Cyber attacks are way more common than people think. One of the recommendations from very prominent IT people is you need to have continuous network monitoring. Look, if you're a family or even a small business, you're not going to have an IT person watching all of your computers and your networks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just not going to be practical to do that. So, what do? How do you have your monitoring done? Well, there are certain programs that you can take advantage of, and you can see some of these on our website, Risk Coverage, where either through an insurance company or through a liability company, in addition to having insurance coverage, if you do get a hack, that carrier will also have continuous monitoring on your network. As an example, what can happen in the real estate market, San Francisco's MLS was hit and it basically shut down their property listings. No clear timeline on a fix. So how much does that cost? If you're a real estate professional and you are counting on the fact that you have listings and you're a realtor and that's how you get people calling you up, well, how are you going to have any business as a realtor if people can't reach you? Right? It's impossible. This is why you want to have that monitoring, because if you are out of business, not only can it cost you money, but think about if you're that MLS system, right? You're that MLS database company and you can't provide listings for your clients. They could sue you and you could have third party liability, and you may want to have coverage for that. So that way you're not at risk of losing lots of money. In the same subject matter, AI is also a concern for people, and we'll get to the real estate and automobiles in a minute. But AI is such an evolving technology that there's predictions that it may create a world where people stay inside. Nobody wants to leave the house because they're chased down by swarms of bots. This comes from a Skype engineer. Now, is this dramatic? Yes, it's probably dramatic. But think about all the things that now seem like they're dramatic that nobody could ever predicted even 3 or 4 years ago. So something to keep an eye on. We'll be watching this subject, this AI subject, like we always have for a long time. And we'll keep you up to date on what's happening. So let's talk real estate. Obviously, everybody knows it's tough to find a house to buy that's reasonable. The prices have gone through the roof. Uh, Mortgage payments are up, not only because of the pricing, but because of mortgage interest rates are now up. They're over 7, rapidly approaching 8. We're going to talk momentarily about what the general school of thought is and what the smart money is doing for planning for rates. Spoiler alert, 7% is not the end. 7% is not the bottom. Wishful thinking is not going to make the real estate market go away. What is driving the market? Well, you remember back last year and even up until a few months ago, there was talk about how institutional buyers, meaning hedge funds, were buying up houses. Well, you haven't heard much about that for a while, where these hedge funds are buying up homes. They kind of backed away a little bit because there was some negative publicity. Well, it's coming back with a vengeance. Institutional buyers won't stay on the sideline forever. This is temporary. The fact that institutional buyers have stepped away from the market is just temporary. Why is it temporary? Well, first, they did it initially because there was some public outcry. There was some even legislation where some government agencies and legislatures were looking at changing the rules so these institutional buyers can't buy up all these homes in neighborhoods and rent them out. Well, there's been some legal opposition to those laws from the institutional buyers, and they're probably going to win. It's probably illegal to keep people from buying homes, even if you're a company. The bigger reason, though, is institutional buyers about a year ago started to realize interest rates are going to go up again. At the time, they were probably around 6.2. And why buy homes when the rates are 6.2 if the rates are going to go up in the future? So they knew this going in. They knew rates were going to go up. They're not stupid. They know what's happening in the market. So they pulled back. Rates went up to 7. If you notice, they're still not buying in large numbers. What does that tell you? Rates are going to go up even more. So now when rates go up to 8% or 8.5%, it's going to be easier for them to find inventory to buy deals because more people are going to want to sell at 8.5% than they will at 6%. And more importantly, the houses that are for sale will have less competition. There will be fewer consumers that'll be out there wanting to buy homes if the rate is 8.5%. They won't be able to compete. When the institutional buyer comes in, guess what their interest rate is? 0, because they pay cash. So if you're a Joe Schmo buyer and you want to buy this house, look on the screen. See these houses over here? Pick one of these houses. You want to buy this house, and the house is selling for $482,000. You have an 8.5 interest rate. That might put your payment at $4,000 a month. The institutional buyer comes in with cash that they have, and they put that money in the house. Their payment is 0. So now they can rent it out to you for maybe $4,000 a month or $3,800 a month, right? You're going to pay the same thing that you could if you bought it as a mortgage, maybe a little bit less, but now you don't own the home, and they can raise your rent up in a few years. See how that works? So keep an eye on this. We will too. Watch our channel. We'll see if the institutional buyers jump back into the marketplace, which they certainly will, in the coming months or maybe early part of 2024, because interest rates are going to continue to go up. How do we know that? Well, bank rate. Who would know more about bank rates than bankrate.com? It's the end of an era for mortgage rates. End of an era. What was the era? Well, we've talked about this before on this channel. If you've been watching this channel, you know how this works. For 2 decades, American homeowners enjoyed historically cheap mortgage rates. This is an important thing to keep in mind. 7% is not a high rate. 7% is a normal rate. Even 8% is a normal rate. High rate is when you're talking 11, 12, 13, over 10. Historically cheap is what we have had. Let's take a trip down memory lane, the article says. From April 20th, 2011 to October 3rd, 2018, that's 7 years. The average mortgage rate never topped 5%. After a period of mortgage rates barely above 5% in 18, they plunged again. They went down to 3%. It wasn't until April of 22 that they rose to 5%. So that's from 2011 to 2022, under 5%. In fact, even before that, even before 2011, they were pretty low. Now they're at 7.3, and that's not the end of it. The punch bowl of lower rates has been taken away. This is a sobering environment on the housing market. Why is it sobering? Well, anybody who has a house that they bought or financed anytime in the last basically 10 years, 20 years, they have a rate that's probably under 5%. They're not selling, because if they sell, now they have to get a rate that's higher for the new house. The last time mortgage rates topped 7.3%, which is where we are now, was May 2001. That's 20 years ago plus. So for the last 20 years, rates were lower than they are now. The other big difference is back then, the median home price was $156,000. That's the median home price in 2001. $156,000. Income was $52,000. 2 decades later, rates are back where they were, 7.3. Don't look at that as a high rate. Look at that as that's what a normal rate is, because in reality, that's what it is. Wishful thinking set aside. Much has changed. Now the price of a house is $400,000. That's more than double. What kicked off the era of low rates? There's a lot of reasons. We've been spoiled by record low interest rates. Mortgage rates have settled into a range that's more in line with modern history. Well, there you go. If you've been watching this channel for more than a few months, it's like a broken record. We've told you that even when it went up to 6.5, don't look at that as a high rate. 7.3 to 8.5, that's the normal range of mortgage rates in history. Started at 9/11, they dropped the rates to get the economy going. Some experts are still optimistic rates will come down. I don't agree. Call me crazy. Prove me wrong in a few years. We'll replay the tape on this video. We're not shy. We stand behind what we say. It's a prediction. Nobody knows for sure. But it's a prediction. Okay, high rate tips for home buyers. This is not really helpful. Budget. Yeah, well, big deal. How does that help you? Curate your credit score. That's not going to change your rate too much. Shop around. Well, if they're all the same, that's not going to help you. Negotiate for a rate. You can't negotiate rates. So this is not helpful at all. What's helpful is buying the cheapest house that you can stand. Don't hold out for your dream house. Buy the cheapest house you can stand, even if it needs work, so you don't have to pay the high rate on as much money. And this is what we're talking about. As mortgage rates lock homeowners in place, remodeling comes of age. How do we know this? Well, we know it from our builder division, Secure Builders, general contractor. Remodeling and addition is huge. Think about it. Instead of having to sell your house and buy another house, why not just add on to your existing house? If you have a $400,000 house, or let's say 450, the average price of a house right now, 450. If you sell that house today and buy a new house, it's going to cost you $50,000 just in transaction cost. You have a 6% realtor fee on 450, right? That's almost 30 grand. You're going to have another 1 or 2% cost of closing costs, title insurance, title fees, maybe mortgage fees. When you move to your new house, you're going to have to buy some basic stuff like, new curtains or whatnot. It's going to cost you $50,000 just to move from one house to another if it's exactly the same price house. If you buy another 450 house, which you're probably not going to do, you're probably going to upgrade your house, which means you might have to take on a mortgage of 8% on whatever you don't have covered with equity. So what if you take that $50,000 and you just put an addition on your existing house? Unless you have to move for your job to a different state, right? The move to an equal house is going to cost you 50 grand. Why not just put the 50,000 into your existing house and upgrade your house? New kitchen. Most important thing to do is look at an addition. They're talking here about remodeling, but think about an addition, because an addition actually adds square footage. Remodeling just makes your house up to date, which is good, but an addition is a better way to go. So, last subject, everybody wants to know about it. What about cars? Car prices also unsustainable. Surging loan delinquencies. Many consumers can't afford their auto loans. And those are loans that were taken out in the last year. It takes a long time to create a delinquency on an auto loan. Most times, you're going to need to be delinquent for 3-4 months. And that's not going to happen right when you first buy the car. You're going to buy the car. You'll probably pay the payments for 3 or 4 months. Then you go delinquent. So you might be 6 or 8 months at minimum. So any loans that are going delinquent now are probably a year old. A year ago, interest rates were lower and car prices were lower. So think about all the cars that were sold since then or that are being sold right now. Those loans are going to be even more unsustainable. In fact, there's already some pushback to the auto market where people are buying less cars because they're seeing payments of $1,000. And you might say, well, how could a payment be $1,000? Well, think about it. If the average price of a car right now is $46,000. I'm not sure if it says that in the article. Nope. But right now, the average price of a new car is actually now at $48,000. If you take out a 5-year loan at current rates, which you're probably going to get maybe 8 or 9%, your payment's $1,000 for the average car. For some people, that's what they paid on rent or mortgage even 4 years ago. At a typical price of a home in 2019 or 2018 was maybe 200 grand, 220,000. If you got a 3% mortgage on a 220 house, your mortgage payment was about $1,200 for your house 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Now that's what a car costs. Think about that. A car today costs the same per month as what a house cost 5 years ago. That is the most significant thing to think about when it comes to budgets and the economy. How's that going to affect the economy? It can affect it every way from Sunday. Even if you don't have any loans on your car, your house is paid off, this crisis of budget can affect you on the employment side. Whatever you do for a living, whatever company you work for, if the majority of revenue for that company, sales, comes from consumers who are now not able to afford their car loan or their house note, they're going to stop buying things. Think about if your business is the first thing that a consumer will stop buying, or the last thing they will start buying, or is it a necessity, right? If you're selling luxury goods or discretionary items, or your company does that you work for, that may be impacted over the next few years. That may affect your job, not counting AI. And we've talked about AI before. So that's how all this ties together. Also related to vehicles, EVs, broken record. We talk about it all the time. So electric vehicles are right now extremely high profile, hot button issue. Government's pushing them. Dealerships are pushing them. Everybody's pushing them. This particular person has indicated that they had a nightmare experience that prospective EVs are afraid of. Had a sizable trip and the charging infrastructure failed. How did that actually happen? Well, let's take a look. He had a 2024 Q8. I said he. Is it a he? Yeah, Stephen Rivers. Okay. Conquered the mountains of Colorado. Next day, I had to drive it back to Denver in the morning. That's when the EV nightmare began, and it had nothing to do with the car. The car was just fine. He parked in a fast charging station and went to dinner. Before walking away, I confirmed the car said it was charging. The light was green. Charger appeared to be charging. All appeared right with the world. When I returned 2 hours later, I saw the screen. It said that everything was good. The car had another 21 miles of range, and my place was only 6 miles away. I was staying in an apartment that had no charging infrastructure. Now it's 9 p.m. So now here's the deal. He's got to go 90 miles the next day at 6 a.m. It's 9 o'clock at night. His car has 21 miles, and he's staying in an apartment that has no charger. Now what? They started searching for other charging stations. We didn't need something like a fast charger, but we did need something that could charge overnight. The sites are dedicated to providing accurate info. We only found out by going to a second site that it can only have a maximum speed at 7 kilowatts. We had 10 miles of range, and it was 10 p.m. Half an hour later, we had 20 miles of range. They went to a third charging station. You see where this is going, right? Another charger was 3 miles away, had decent reviews. They went to that one. Guess what? I don't know. Let's see. Guess what? It didn't work either. Here's the thing about charging stations. It's not like a gas station where there's employees that are there that if something goes wrong, they can fix it. These are out of sight, out of mind. These companies, I don't know who EVgo is. Yeah, they have things that monitor them to see if they're working, but what's the downside, right? Gas station, if you're not selling gas, you're not making your cents per gallon profit. These are more out of sight, out of mind. EVgo charging stations also have a 60-minute time limit, which means I can only charge 45%. Technically, that's enough to get to Denver, but he didn't trust it. $90,000 SUV, had to unplug it, plug it back in, and restart the charging. So he left it and locked the car to go home, so let it charge. When I arrived at home, I learned that when I locked the car, it stopped charging. So I have to turn around and go back. So here's the thing. At some point, everybody will know how charging works. Everybody will know how the process goes and what the limits are and what they aren't. But in the meantime, these are going to be scenarios that pop up for people that might become problematic, because it's not like a gas station where you just pull in, you spend a minute or two, you're topped off and you can go. There's a lot of quirks to it. I know you have an opinion about this. You might be all in with EVs. You might love EVs. You might want to, get one, or you might be against it altogether. Don't stay quiet about it. Put your opinions below. Let us know what you think about this, because I know you have an opinion and people want to hear it. People want to know what's the vibe, what the buzz is in the marketplace, because that's the only way we're going to find out about what the public is thinking about these important subjects: EVs, automobiles, interest rates, mortgages, home prices. Because by knowing what other people are thinking, you'll be more well informed about how you're going to plan your next year or two or five, financially,